where talk empowers and becomes action. Listen, hi YouTube, welcome to SiriusXM Urban View. I, as much as anybody else, believe that when you have a victory as the leader of a nation, you should brag about it. Like, I think that makes sense. Like, if you say that a thing has to happen and then the thing happens and it happened because you caused it to happen, then that's something braggadocious, or I should not braggadocious. That's something you could certainly brag about. That's fine. Not a problem. Have no issue with that. The challenge is when it comes to Donald T. Rump, we have somebody who acts as though when he's navigating the world that the rest of us don't read and that the rest of us don't know things. Now, it is true that many of the people who are in his reality don't read and don't know things in the MAGA world. And it's not shade to them, but we know that when he says, I love the poorly educated, there are reasons for this. Now, YouTube, you guys didn't get to hear the clips that we just heard. There was two CNN clips where essentially what we learned is that after the tariffs were announced as against Mexico and Canada yesterday, the tariffs get announced and it says 25% tariffs on Mexico, 25% tariffs on Canada, and we're going to hold them to the fire. And I was like, wow, that was fast. And one of the things we were concerned about yesterday was, my God, this is going to have a real impact on our pocketbooks. This is going to have a real impact on what it is that we are trying to do in terms of financial sustainability for us as individuals. This could be a real problem. Yesterday, I was like, listen, y'all, you're going to see this in your grocery store, right? It's going to be a problem. Well, child, let me tell you, last night, we get the news, or yesterday afternoon, rather, we get the news that apparently Mexico and Canada caved. And I was like, well, damn, that was quick. Mexico and Canada caved, and they caved on the tariffs. And we got this announcement that Donald T. Rump was like, nah, son, I won. I own them. They are my sons. Basically, they caved. They gave me everything that they wanted. So we're going to hold off on these tariffs. We're going to pause the tariffs for 30 days. And I was like, wow, that's something. We got to unpack this. Child. Let me tell you, this is why it's important to read. And this is why it's important to read the fine print, because when you get into the realities of what Mexico and Canada agreed to, it's like, wait a minute. First of all, let's unpack this, because those of everybody may not know what Canada and Mexico had agreed to. So Canada agreed to add $1.3 billion to their border security fund and to create a fentanyl czar, which is interesting because most of the fentanyl that comes into this country is actually brought here by Americans from Mexico. Very little of it actually comes down from Canada. Not to say none of it does, but the bulk of it is coming from Mexico. So we learned yesterday that Justin Trudeau was like, cool, I got you. These tariffs they were so terrible. I'm so grateful that we got to negotiate this out. We're going to put $1.3 billion on the border, Donald T. Rump. Don't you worry about it. You the man. You the man. And then we hear of Mexico. They're going to add 10,000 border patrol officers to the southern border, fortify the border with these border patrol officers, 10,000 officers. And it's like, man, they're going to add all this extra equipment, all this extra ability and capacity to really prevent border crossings. And I was like, wow, that was quicker than expected. I can't believe that Canada and Mexico caved. Then, child, we began doing some research. We began looking at some news. We began reading some of the papers from December of 2024. And that's when we learned, wait a minute, Canada announced in December 17th of 2024, that they were going to add billions of dollars, or I should say $1.3 billion to the border. And that number is weird because 1.3 billion, isn't that exactly what Donald Trump said that they were going to do? Justin Trudeau tells Donald Trump, don't you worry about it, Donald Trump. We're going to give you $1.3 billion to beef up the border. Donald Trump apparently did not realize that was already the deal that had been negotiated by Joe Biden and the Democrats. Mexico, their 10,000 personnel at the border, they already had 15,000 personnel at the border, which is something that they had done back in 2021. They have had all of these additional personnel at the border, which essentially means that Donald Trump launched the tariffs, destroyed the economy in terms of stock market crashing and people losing resources and losing money for a day, and then announced a deal that was basically a deal that had already been in place. Are we stupid or is he dumb? Like, I don't understand. He basically did all of that destruction, caused all of that frustration, all of that angst, and was able to do so, and then ended up getting nothing more, no additional concession. You heard the clips for those of you who are listening to Urban View. There were no additional concessions. There was nothing. Now, Canada did say that they're going to put a fentanyl czar, a staffer. But as I told you, most of the fentanyl ain't coming from Canada. It's coming from Americans who are bringing it through Mexico. So this was much ado about nothing. Much ado about nothing. But that wasn't all. That wasn't all that happened yesterday. Lord help us. That was not all that happened yesterday. Because once word got out that this is what was going on, once word got out that Donald Trump basically went through all this destruction like a bull in a tea shop, basically for nothing, then we look at what the rest of the world is talking about in their newspapers. In Montreal, they have stupid, a big picture of Donald Trump with his lips like this, looking like an anus. If you know, you know, looking like an anus, and called him stupid. In the UK, the Daily Star's headlines read, Hunt, and they got a picture of a brain and Donald Trump. The brain is not in Donald Trump. The brain is separated from Donald Trump. They have the headlines that read, Hunt for leader of free world's errant cerebrum. Ain't no shade like British shade. They be very shady. Missing brain is what it's called. Last spotted being batshit crazy, sparking a global trade war, spooking financial markets, and accusing baffled Britain of being out of line. The rest of the world sees what just happened because the rest of the world reads and accesses news. We've got memes that talk about Justin Trudeau on the phone talking to President Sheinbaum of Mexico, talking about what Justin Trudeau was like. So I offered him what we've already been doing, and he dropped the tariffs. And then President Sheinbaum is like, OMG, me too. We did the same. America just got played. Now, MAGA may not know it. People in Donald Trump profile or space may not know it, but the Morning Star has its headlines as Return of the Village Idiot. The rest of the world is clear about what's happening. They're now calling Trump's brain the Gulf of Stupidity. I have seen the most hilarious memes talking about this, all because all of that destruction to the financial markets, spooking people and messing with the pricing realities of our groceries and all the things that we import from these other places to get absolutely nothing more than what Joseph Robinette Biden and Vice President Kamala Demi Harris had already negotiated. This is where we're at. We are being ruled by the stupid, by the unknowing, by the unlearned, by those who just move on emotion and don't actually have plans, don't actually have concrete issues that they're going to address. But then we also hear that Donald Trump is mad at South Africa. Really, elongated muskrat is mad at South Africa. Why are they mad at South Africa? Well, let me pause just a little bit because I want to bring two things or a couple of different stories together. Remember, we spoke about USAID, USAID. This was an international agency that essentially is responsible for billions of dollars in funding and support for humanitarian issues all across the country. Now, there are some who have said, and some reports indicate that some of USAID's money is also laundering and not necessarily always on the up and up, but it's America. So, like CIA, y'all know America, like it's America go America. But most of what USAID was responsible for was advancing pro-democracy efforts and using their resources to provide things like healthcare, to provide things like access to school and education, nonprofit type stuff. Also, what USAID was partially responsible for was helping in the dismantling of South African apartheid, at least as it pertains to the view that people like elongated muskrat have. One of the issues that USAID was working on was also to make apartheid less habitable, to make South Africa less habitable for incorporating or for maintaining apartheid, I should say. Not to say that America has always been against apartheid. Let us be clear. It's America. Come on. But America, America just had, who was it? Nelson Mandela as a terrorist up until like I was in high school, right? And so the reality is America has never always been on the right side of anything. And it's, again, it's America. But when it comes to South African apartheid, people who benefited from South African apartheid, like elongated muskrat, really see USAID as one of the agencies that was responsible for dismantling of South African apartheid. So you may have heard yesterday, one of the things that came out and over the weekend as well was Donald Trump talking about how angry he was about the fact that white farmers in South Africa are being treated very unfairly. Now, what he's talking about is a story, a line of conversation that basically is saying that in South Africa, what they are doing is taking land from white farmers and redistributing it to the indigenous Black people. Now, according to President Ramaphosa, what he said, that first of all, that's not true. And what they said is that the government has not confiscated, and President Rama, I'm sorry, y'all, if I'm messing this up, because y'all know my tongue has been colonized by American enslavement. So I'm sure I'm not pronouncing this name correctly. But President Ramaphosa, who is the president of South Africa, essentially said, hold on, let me get to my quote. Yeah, okay, here we go. Says that the government has not confiscated any land, and he looks forward to engaging with Trump to foster a better understanding over a policy that he says ensures equitable public access to land. They lost America leadership once they said equitable, because I don't know if you've noticed, but diversity, equity, and inclusion is something that has been in the crosshairs of the white nationalist leadership of this nation right now. The article in Reuters goes on to say Trump's attack against South and Trump's understanding of the land reform issues that are happening there. Trump's attack was echoed, listen to this, by his South African-born billionaire backer, Elon Musk, who said in a post on X that the country had, quote, openly racist ownership laws, suggesting that white people were victims. Now, I got to be honest with you. I had it with white mediocrity. I really just had. And I said at the beginning of the show, I'm so grateful that white nationalists have really opened up the language by being so explicitly racist that we can have honest dialogue and conversation. I'm sorry, but white South Africans, that's not your land. You came there to colonize and to steal the land. It ain't yours. And equity requires that there be a redistribution. Now, you can agree or disagree with that. However, you all should just know that South Africa has some, at least some of the agencies in South Africa have some responses. They had some responses. I found this letter that was issued yesterday, Monday, February the 3rd, 2025, and it's from a group called Injeje. Now, y'all already know, I done told y'all my tongue is colonized, so I'm not going to be able to pronounce this correctly. Just work with your sister, okay? My Black American sister, just work with me, all right? Injeje, a South African group, calls on President Donald Trump of the U.S. to set aside land in America for all the whites in South Africa. Child. They was like, oh, you so concerned about the white people in South Africa? Why don't you give them some land in America? Now, I laugh at this, but I really don't want that to happen because I'm here and we don't want to deal with white South Africans. We already got elongated muskrat. He's been destructive enough. We don't need no more. But the press statement goes on to say the following. Injeje calls on President Donald Trump of the USA to set aside land in America for all whites in South Africa. Our council makes this call after learning of Trump's concern on South African land issues through a social media post made by Trump. They was like, oh, you concerned? You worried about the white South Africans? Give them some land. Let them come to your house. They say, whilst we are fully cognizant of the fact that the USA is a strong backer of the racist, neoliberal, and imperialist formations, such as the Democratic Alliance and AfriForum, these are groups that are operating within the continent, the majority of indigenous people of South Africa do not recognize them as both representatives of their interests. Neither is America recognized as an overlord that can dictate to the people of South Africa what they should or should not do. The American investments in South Africa benefit the minority white commercial class, whilst the rest of the indigenous people are nothing but slave labor. And thus, USA economic interests are meaningless to a people who reside in abject poverty and deteriorating standards of living, whilst a small group whom is friends with Trump reap inexplicable wealth which has never belonged to them. Child. I'm like, South Africa ain't playing. They not playing. And they basically go on to say, this part, it took my breath away. They said the true landlords of South Africa are the people of monarchs and royal leadership institutions. It belongs to the indigenous people of the land, not some settlers who stole it using weapons of maximum destruction against an indigenous populace that was otherwise hospitable to an otherwise devilish people that had murderous, thievery, and barbaric intentions. Oh, I love it. So as to ensure that the class of people, and they put class of people in quotes, that has Trump so concerned are safe and protected. We call on Trump to set aside land for all whites in South Africa, irrespective of their country of origin. We call on America to take on all white farms that feel unsafe in South Africa and give them land and funding to start farms in a country where they will be totally safe from anything and everything going on in South Africa. They said it is essential to understand that the revolution in South Africa can no longer be stopped. It is a foregone conclusion that the indigenous people of the land, led by their monarchs and royal leadership institutions, will rise to reclaim what rightfully belongs to them, just like the, and I'm about to mess these names up, forgive me, but just like the Kewe, San, and Kosa, I feel like there's supposed to be a click right there. Kosa, I know I'm messing it up, but it's XHOSA. And I believe that is the name that has like a click in it, which, you know, like how people like that when we in Black America talk, they have a click language feature that like you will hear the clicks throughout everything that they say. I can't do it, but that's the language that they're talking about. Formed an alliance in 50. So basically they said, just like all these groups, these indigenous African groups formed an alliance in the year 1510 Talk about history. 1510, at the Battle of Salt River to fight off the Portuguese invasion led by the Viceroy of Portuguese India, Dom Francisco de Almeida, wiping out his entire force. So too will the indigenous people of South Africa unite to reclaim their land from an arrogant, racist minority who think they will turn South Africa into another Israel and Palestine situation. That will never happen. Damn. The world has had it. The melanated global majority has had it. And we are in a time where we get to have honest dialogue and honest discourse. And basically, South Africa, this group was like, you so concerned about the white minority here that has been devilish and thievish and barbaric. Barbarous is not a word. Barbaric. Why don't you give them land in your space? Let them come to you. Then they ain't got to worry about what's happening in South Africa. We are in a time right now where we are going to have to really think about moves that we are making. And for a lot of us here in this country, we, regardless of our racial background or our history, we have been sort of indoctrinated to think in terms of only America matters, right? That's part of being an American. Like, there's a very self-centered nature to the culture of America. And that's true regardless of whether you're Black American, white American, because we're socialized here in this space. I'm going to encourage my Black American, my Pan-African folk who are here in the United States, who have sort of fallen victim to this idea that we have this very myopic view of the world and our place in it. I really need us to start reading newspapers from other countries. And you don't have to get them delivered to your house, but just go online, start reading newspapers from other global majority countries. Start thinking and seeing about how the rest of the world is looking at America and navigating these very serious issues. When Justin Trudeau of Canada and President Claudia Sheinbaum of Mexico was like, hey, we're going to give you exactly what we already gave you. And then that man, that orange menace, came out and announced that he had done something good. And then the rest of us was like, no, you didn't. And we know you didn't. The only people who believe it are the people in his group. I want us to take this moment and to take this opportunity to expand our connection to the international Pan-African community. And I know that there are some people who are in the United States who believe that we should have a much more nativist approach to Blackness. And that is really something that is tied to an effort for reparations. And I think, listen, if that's your bag, I'm not mad at you. Do what you got to do. Do it lovingly and not, with a whole lot of vitriol the way some of y'all do, but do it lovingly. But that's fine. If that's the stance you're going to take for reparations, that's fine. But for other issues, we are going to have connections, international connections, because I'm just going to say it. This is the wrong time to be thinking we're going to be safe here in isolation. This is the wrong time to be thinking we are not going to have these cross-Atlantic conversations. And when we're thinking about the great honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, when we think about what he was trying to do with the Black Star and what he was trying to do with creating those connections in the early 1900s, he was able to organize, they say, nearly 6 million Pan-African community or people in Pan-African communities all across the world. They ain't had no internet, they ain't had no YouTube, they ain't had no TikTok, they ain't had no Snap, no Insta, no Facebook, no Twitter, no nothing. But they had the word that was written and the word that was spoken. And they had a love for African people that compelled them to think not just in terms of the national flags of the colonizers with whom they lived, but to think in terms of the beauty of our potential for for international connection. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense. 866-801-8255, 866-801-TALK. We are in a time, and this is a time that is ripe with potential, ripe with opportunity, if we are willing to take it. And I, for one, am, and I hope that you are as well. So if you can get your hand on newspapers from across the globe, do so. If you can engage with dialogue from the global majority, with people from the global majority who can share with you what it's like there and how they see America, this is going to be a time where we are going to have to expand our reach and expand our relationships. And I, for one, am grateful that even though all this craziness is happening here in this country, that we're able to do so. Now, several of you, when I do these lives, I watch the comments after, and a lot of you have said things like, well, how do we do? Like, you're talking about all the problems, you're letting us know all the terrible things that are happening. What do we do to fix it? I'm going to suggest that in order for you to hear that part of the conversation, because we're actually going to do that now, I'm going to get ready to get off this live, but I encourage you to get a subscription to SiriusXM. We're on channel 126. The entire channel is just thebomb.com. But we're about to talk about a concept called the Indivisible Guide. And for those of you here in the States, just Google the words Indivisible Guide. It is like a PDF that basically tells you how to organize when it comes to engaging with your elected officials. We are about to have that conversation now. You're not going to hear it now. if you're on YouTube only, but I just encourage you to get the Indivisible Guide. Once this post, I'll probably put a link to it in the description, because these are the tools that we're going to need to navigate everything that is happening. 866-801-8255, 866-801-TALK. Thank you all for being with us here on YouTube. Urban View, let's get into this. We got some stuff to figure out.